So you can contact me anytime with email address, and my website. I've been faculty in computer science there for last 10 years, and I graduated from University of Texas in Dallas, 2005. So the topic today I'm going to talk about is wireless sensor network. Sure some of you might have worked in this area. Uh, so specifically, we are going to look at a problem called the data gathering problem. As some of you may know, the main purpose of wireless sensor network is to distribute the sensors in an area, and they measure the temperature of the room or things like that. So one issue there is, so if you look at a network like this, so you have data sent by each sensor. We don't need the data from every sensor. So what we typically want is an aggregate. So for example, if you spread sensors across the room, we don't want data as a temperature at each point in this room. We just want what the temperature of this room. So so what we want is to gather the data from all these sensors and then get an aggregate of it. For example, the average temperature of the room. So which means, so we don't want data to be sent directly by each sensor to a control center. It's called sync as a control center. So if each sensor sends data directly to the control center, which is far away from the network, the sensors will quickly lose all the energy. So what we want is some kind of optimization of the energy. So for that purpose, we typically use what is called some communication topologies for data gathering, and some of these are like clusters where you group the sensors into clusters, and each cluster has a cluster head like the red colored node, and the sensors nearby send the data to the nearby cluster head. And the cluster head then aggregate the data among themselves and forward to the sync. Or it could be a simple chain where you have like nodes linearly arranged as a chain, and you have again a leader node, so data propagates towards the leader node on both sides of the chain. Or you could have like a connected dominating set equal to CPS, typically a backbone of the network, and the nodes other than this backbone nodes forward the data again to the nearby CDS or you could also have like tree data structure where in a tree, as you can see here, in the tree here you may have some loops or cycles, but here you don't have any cycle. Cycle means you have more than one path from one node to another node, whereas here you have only one path from any node to any other node. So that's so if you look at all these things, I have already surveyed, analyzed the efficiency of all these different communication topologies with respect to minimizing the energy consumption and maximizing the node lifetime. And we found out that the trees were more energy efficient. So the focus has been mostly recently on data gathering trees. Um, so let me just introduce a particular concept and then come back to data gathering trees. I'm going to talk mostly today on what is called bottleneck node weight or bottleneck link weight also. So just a motivating example. So let's say you have small graphs like this and vertices, and you have some link weights like this. So from node 1 to node 10, you have three paths. One, the top one, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 8, 9, 10, and then the 1, 5, 6, 7, 10. I defined the bottleneck weight of the path as the minimum of this 8 weights. So for the first path, 8, 4, 7, 3, 9, the minimum weight is 4. So I call that as the bottleneck weight. Then 8, 10, 5, 9. So 5 is the minimum. Then 8, 7, 12, 14. 7 is the minimum. So I want the maximum of this minimum. That's 7. Which means if I go through this path, okay, 1, 5, 6, 7, 10, the minimum node weight is the max. So this could be, for example, like a trust score. Like for security applications, you can model the node weight as the reliability of the node. So how reliable is the node? So you want to route the packets through a path such that the bottleneck, the minimum trust score is the max. So this has lots of applications. Similarly, for the link weights, you have again the link weight 18, 14, 17 like this, and the minimum of this link weight is 13 here, the minimum is 10 here, and then the minimum that's the idea behind this bottleneck path link or roadways or link route. So we can extend this to the tree. So given a graph like this, so and this is a particular way you can model the link weights and node weights. I simply generate random numbers from 0 to 1 for the link weights, and the sum of the link weights would be the node weight. Of course, you can have different ways we can model the node weights and link weights. So where it is typically used again, like for trust-based communication, this could be a trust score for the link, and how reliable is the node depends on how reliable are the links connected to the node. So you can add the links, the trust score of the links, that could be the node weight. So now we could pick the node which has the largest weight as the leader for this tree, leader node or the root node for this tree, which is this example node 2, and have every node connect to that leader based on the tree. So as I said, in a tree there's no more than one path from any node to any other node. So here all these nodes are connected to the leader node through only one path. So how you connect? As you can see, there are several links. So how you connect the nodes to the leader node? What the algorithm is always about. So I'll present two algorithms. One that will maximize the bottleneck node weight, and the other that will maximize the bottleneck link weight. So for example, if you look at this tree, you can directly connect, for example, let's pick node 6. You have at least two paths from node 6 to node 2. So you can either go through node 5 or you can go through node 4. And the algorithm tells us that it's better to go through node 4, because if you go through node 5, the weight for node 6 is 1.85, this is 1.68, this is 2.42. So the minimum is 1.68. If you go through node 4, the minimum is 2.02, 1.69, the minimum is 1.69. So again, the bottleneck the bottleneck weight on this path is 1.68. It is more than, it is 1.69 here. So it's better to go through this. So you don't want to do this trial and error. That's why we are going to look at an algorithm to determine such bottleneck weight path in an iterative fashion. Similarly here, based on the link weight concept, node 1, for example, can directly and 0.45. So the minimum of this is 0.25. So that 0.25 is still greater than 0.12. So it's better to go through node 3 and then so that's the idea behind this bottleneck node weight or link weight based data gap. So this is the pseudo code for the algorithm. I'm not going to go over the pseudo code in detail. I'll go over the example in detail so that will make you understand how to implement this. That's actually captures everything pseudo code. So the same graph, we have the node weights and link weights, and so the initialization, as I said, is we need to pick up the leader node. So the leader node or the root node is the one that has the largest node weight. So I pick up node 2. And I directly can assign what is called the tree joint weight, or simply can also call yeah, tree joint weight as it is here. That's the best weight with which a node can join the tree. So for node 2, the root node, that itself is the tree joint weight. For the other node, I don't know how they will connect to the tree. So I have what is called an estimated joint weight, which is like -1 or it could be negative infinity depending on how you want to call it. Basically, these are the not possible node weights, because all node weights are positive. Eventually, all of these will become positive. But since we don't know how they're going to join the tree, we just initialize them with -1, all the blue values on the top. Then the numbers inside the circle indicate the node weights. So these are the individual weights for the nodes, and they are, as I said, based on the sum of the link weights. So we start with node 2, and its tree joint weight is same as its node weight itself. And then we go to the iterations. So the first iteration or each iteration will pick up one node, and we'll say what is called we optimize that node and we explore its neighbors. So we start with basically each iteration will pick the maximum of this weight, and in this first initialization, this is the maximum of all of them. So we start with that, and we explore its neighbors, we visit its neighbors. So what we call relaxation step. Relaxation step is basically we try to see whether we can increase the value of this numbers on the blue, which is the estimated joint weight. So for that we try to do this. We compare this joint weight of the node that we are exploring, in this case it is 2.42, and the node weight itself is 1.63. So that's the optimized step here. So this is the most important step. So we take the estimated joint weight of the node and compare it to the minimum of the weight of the node itself and the free joint weight of the node that you recently occupied. And if you can increase it, so if it is less than the minimum, means this is still less than the minimum of the two, so you can increase it further by setting it to the minimum of the two. So in this example, I am going to set, instead of -1, I will take the minimum of 1.68 and 2.42 and set it to be 1.68. And once I do that, we can say this node has become the parent for this node 5. So we call the ancestor node or parent node. So we indicate that using a dark green here. So I use a green link here. So similarly, I take the minimum of 0.37 and 2.42, and that is still greater than -1. So I set it to 0.37 and I do that for every neighbor. So now you have these are the kind of size nodes for this node which are optimized. So now what I do is the next iteration, I take the maximum of these values, the 0.37, the ones on the blue on the top, 1.68, 1.69, 1.42. Of course, we can cancel the -1, but it doesn't make any difference. So I take the maximum of these, and that is 1.69. So the next iteration, I say that node has been optimized, which means that's the best possible way this node 4 can join the tree. And in a paper I can I have shown how I have proved basically this is the best we can do for this particular node. So now you relax its neighbors. So relaxing its neighbors means you try to see, for example, if one of the neighbors is 6. So we again compare this estimated joint weight, which is -1. The minimum of this 1.69 and 1.85. So minimum of 1.69 and 1.85 is 1.69. So we set that to be the estimated joint weight for this node 8. And we were able to improve from -1 to 1.69. So that's why I make this as the ancestor node for node 6. So we can do that again for node 7. So we take the minimum of -1, compare -1 with the minimum of 1.3 and 1.69, which is 1.3. 3. So we said that you can already notice that the weight with which a node can join the tree cannot exceed its own weight, because in the optimization step here I take the minimum of the node weight itself and the tree joint weight. So which means for node 7 we cannot go beyond 1.30 because we already reached its node weight 1.30. As for node 6, its weight is 1.85, but the ancestor node through which it connects the tree is no more than 1.69. So that limits it. So we repeat the iterations like this. So the next iteration we pick up is the maximum of these values: 0.37, 1.68, 1.69. So we pick this 1.69 and we relax its neighbors. So we can now find, we can, instead of -1, we can make this 1.15, because the minimum of 1.15 or 1.69 is 1.15. So if you are able to bring in at least one node into the tree, then that node becomes ancestor node or an intermediate node of the tree. Otherwise, it remains as what is called a leaf. Leaf node means it does not have any children downstream. So in the further iterations, as you can see, the next value you can pick up is 1.42, but the neighbors, for example, this one is already optimized because this minimum of 0.37 and 1.42 is still 0.37. So we cannot improve it further. So if we cannot improve the weight of a node, we just leave it as it is. So that way, similarly, 1.30, the minimum of 1.30 and 1.42 is still 1.30, and it is the same as what we have already. So we cannot improve further. So this node is not an intermediate node. So it remains as a leaf node, and even subsequent iterations, the other nodes remain as leaf. So one interesting property that you can observe is the values of the nodes that we pick. The optimized, like 2.02 is the first value of the node we pick, and then 1.69, and then 1.69 again for another node, and then 1.42, and then 1. You can see a continuously decrease. They don't come back and again increase. So they continuously decrease, and that's a very interesting property of this algorithm, which also proved mathematically in the paper. So what you end up with is basically like a set of links like this, which we call as the tree. We can make a kind of directed tree, because we want every node to forward the data to we can make direct tree can do simply a breadth first search algorithm starting from the root node and get the direction. So that's easy to assign. So essentially what happens is each leaf node will send its data to the parent node. The parent node will aggregate the data coming from the other nodes. So for example 7 can send to 4, 8 can send to 6, then 4 has to wait for the data to come from 6. Similarly 3 will send and all these things will send, but 2 has to basically wait for the data to come from all its 4 children. That's the maximum node weight based data gathering. So we can do a similar thing for link weight based data gathering. And just for consistency purpose, we can pick node 2 again as the leader node. Here, actually, we can pick any node as the leader node or the root node, but to be consistent, we pick the node that has the largest node weight also as the root node. So theoretically it could be like positive infinity, but for implementation purpose, you could assign some large positive value as the starting weight. Again, the optimization step is the same thing. We take the minimum, so the other nodes have a negative 1 as the starting value. So we pick the maximum of these values as the starting the first node to optimize, and we again check whether this node weight -1 is less than the minimum of the link weight. Here node weight 0.89 and 1000, so the minimum is 0.89, so we set these values to be 0.12, 0.89 and so on. And again in each step we pick the maximum of these node weights, so 0.89. So now we can set this node 6, take the minimum of 0.47 and 0.89. We check whether it is still greater than -1. So we can set that as 0.47, and that makes 5 as the parent node. And in this case, there is no guarantee that the sequence of node weights we pick for optimization will decrease, but what we can also see is the parents can change. So for example, after this iteration, we pick the maximum among these values to be 0.47, right? So after we pick that 0.47, oh sorry, 0.56. So we pick this 0.56. So when we optimize this node, we can see that from 0.47, the previous value here, we can take the minimum of 0.56 and 0.59, which is 0.56, that is greater than 0.47. So that means instead of coming from 2, 5, 6, we can now go from 2, 4, 6. And that will increase the bottleneck weight from 0.47, the minimum of 0.89, 0.47 to 0.5. So which means this 5 is no longer the parent for node 6. Node 4 becomes the parent. So in each iteration, things could change like that, and we go through a sequence of iterations like that, and again we now have basically a spanning tree that connects all the nodes, and we can make it a directed tree by running the first virtual algorithm. So we can cross check. This is the same tree that I showed at the beginning before we started the example. The same tree that we had here. So as you can see here, node 1 can connect to the root node by going through this path rather than directly connecting, because the bottleneck link weight is 0.25 rather than 0.4. So the next step of this research is then to implement the algorithms and analyze the performance of these two trees, and we can analyze different metrics. I'm going to introduce one metric called the aggregation delay, which may not be very familiar to most of you. Before that, the diameter of the tree, if you have worked in networks, you know the maximum of the minimum hop count. So, for example, this could be a data gathering tree. So, the diameter is essentially the height of the tree, starting from the root node. What is the maximum number of hops when we leave node? So for this tree, the diameter is 3. Whereas for this tree, the diameter is 5. So it depends on the hop count from the root node. Now the aggregation delay essentially captures the minimum number of time slots it takes for the root node to gather the data from all its tiles. So what I mean by time slots is, for example, if you take this example here, the leaf nodes, they send the data and they have the data at any time, right? So at a particular time slot, they have the data, so they don't need to wait for any other node to send the data to them. So we can assume that the data is ready at time 0. So for node 14, of course, it has its own data, but it has to gather data from its two child nodes. So one thing is, in wireless networks, we cannot let the nodes just send the data at the same time to this node, because there will be collision. So we have to do what is called a time division multiplexer, which means you have to assign time slots. So node 3 is assigned one time slot. At that time, node 13 cannot send the data, so node 3 sends the data at time say 1 to 14, and then at time 2, node 13 sends the data. So that's why I indicate here the end of time slot 2, node 14 will have the data from both its child. Similarly, here node 5 it will take 3 time slots to gather data from its 3 child. Now one thing is node 14 and node 5 can simultaneously aggregate the data because the transmission of data from 3 to 14 will not interfere with 4 to 5. If you use what is called different CDMA codes, of course there are different ways we can do communication, CDMA, TDMA, and all those things. So if you use different codes, then there won't be interference between these two transmissions. So that's the idea here. So at the same level, the intermediate nodes can gather the data from the child node simultaneously, but within the group like this, they have to do a sequential access. So if you go to this example based on this, node 4 will have to take 4 times because these 3 nodes, 8, 15, and 2 are ready with the data, but it has to sequentialize them. So let's say this one sends at time 1 and this sends at time 2, this sends time 3, then 14 can send at the end of time 4 So if we do that, again here 12 has to gather the data from 7 and 9. 7 and 9 are not ready with the data before time slot 4. So the node 12 cannot do anything before time slot 4. So only at the end of time slot 4, its 2 child nodes are ready with the data. So 7 can send now data to 12 at time slot 5, and then 9 can send data to 12 at time slot 6. So that's what I mean by aggregation delay. So same thing with this example here, we can work out the numbers and it takes time slot 5 for node 12 to gather the data. Coming to the properties or the characteristics of this feed, as I indicate here, and we'll go through the results. We already saw diameter and a minimum aggregation delay. Why I say is the minimum aggregation delay because I assume some idealistic conditions that there are sufficient CDMA codes so that aggregation can take place in parallel. So if we have reduced number of CDMA codes, then there has to be some waiting. So that's why I call this as minimum aggregation delay. Now the other important things, these nodes doesn't have any children are called the leaf. So we can measure what is called the fraction of nodes as leaf nodes. So we basically count the total number of leaf nodes and the total number of nodes, and the fraction is the fraction of leaf nodes, and the average number of child nodes per intermediate node. So for that, what it means basically is for each node we count the number of child nodes. For node 14, 2 child nodes. For node 7, 4 child nodes. For node 12, only at the next level. So for node 12, 7 and 9 are the 2 child. So you basically count the number of child nodes and average divided by the total number of intermediate nodes. That's this one. And you can see that for different trees, of course, we have different values. And through simulations, what we found is the node weight based data gathering trees are more shallow, like this, which means the diameter is very small. Whereas the link weight based data gathering trees, we observe the diameter to be very large. So if the diameter is very small, what we can see is there are more leaf nodes, because since the diameter is small, only there will be few intermediate nodes. So the number of child nodes per intermediate node is quite large, and the fraction of leaf nodes is also quite large. Whereas for the link weight based data gathering trees, the fraction of leaf nodes is relatively small because the tree is more deep. So which means there are more intermediate nodes, and that makes the number of child nodes per intermediate node to be very small, and the fraction of leaf nodes is also small. So how does this impact energy consumption? That's what we are going to see in the simulation results. If there are few intermediate nodes, what happens is the intermediate nodes are overused in terms of energy consumption, because they have to gather data from each of the child, and the intermediate node spends more energy to gather data from each of its child nodes and forward further upstream. But what also is an advantage, the other way we can look at it is, the more the leaf nodes, because leaf nodes spend energy only to transmit the data to the parent. So they don't spend energy to aggregate from the multiple nodes. So the leaf nodes lose relatively less energy compared to the intermediate nodes. So that way, the majority of the nodes are protected from the use of energy, whereas only the few intermediate nodes are overused. That way, these intermediate nodes, because once they run out of energy, we say the node has died. So the time of first node failure is bound to be very low in terms of the node weight based data gathering field. So we call that as the node lifetime. The nodes have these trees have relatively larger node lifespan because the intermediate nodes spend relatively less energy to aggregate data from the child because they have few child. But there are also few leaf nodes. So the leaf nodes are not protected that much. So after the first node failure, what will happen is nodes quickly run out of energy here because the nodes lose really more energy because they also have to more nodes for inward aggregation. So that's what we do observe in the simulations, and this is my simulation model. If you are working wireless networks, you could have seen all these equations for energy loss to transmit, energy loss to receive, and again there's a parameter called the transmission range, the distance between any two nodes of communication, and we assume the sensing range to be half the transmission range, and this is used to measure what is called the coverage loss of the network, which I'll explain pretty quickly. So the way we conduct the simulations is we generated about 200 network graphs, and the link weights are from 0 to 1, and averaged results for each of the simulation conditions for these 200 graphs. And as I said, the node weights is the sum of the link. So we saw the damage aggregation delay. The weight per node is basically the average weight of all the intermediate nodes and the average weight of all the leaf nodes, and the energy consumed per round node network lifetime already explained to you. Of course, the network lifetime I'll explain more detail after I go through this. So how I measure the coverage loss? So what happens is as the nodes get used, the nodes die. So initially the network will be fully covered. So there will be 100% all nodes are alive. Then what happens is I want to measure due to the exhaustion of node lifetime how much the coverage is lost. So what I do to measure that is I randomly pick some 100 locations and I see whether there is at least one sensor node within the sensing range of that point. So if that means I say the point is covered because the node can sense the dream. If not, I count that as a dead spot. I count I find out what fraction of the network has such dead spots, and that's what I call as a fraction of coverage loss. So then to measure network lifetime, I set a threshold that my coverage loss can be only like 0.05 or 0.30, it's a fraction. So if the network has lost that much coverage, I said the network has reached its lifetime because beyond that the network is not used. So, due to the node failure, the network loses connectivity because the nodes die and so the links go off. So, the network lifetime is basically a minimum of the number of rounds it takes for the network to get disconnected or the coverage loss to reach the threshold. So we proceed in rounds. Rounds means like for every round we go through the data gathering from all the leads. So that's the way we conduct the simulations, and we observe that as I showed the example, the node weight based data gathering trees have a smaller diameter and the link weight based trees has a larger diameter, and the aggregation delay I didn't mention the example, but as you can see in the examples itself, the node weight based data gathering trees have a larger aggregation delay because there are few intermediate nodes and they have to wait data to come from all the child nodes. And I said this is sequential to gather data from the particular child node. So which naturally could increase the aggregation delay. Whereas if you have few child nodes per intermediate node, then more likely the aggregation delay is less. And that's what we confirm through the simulations, as you can see here. Especially the transmission range is more, the number of child nodes per intermediate node, which I show here. You can see here the number of child nodes per intermediate node shoots up. So each intermediate node has like 13 children. So it has to wait to gather data from all these 13 children, and that will automatically increase the aggregation delay also. Okay. And we also observe that the leaf, so the link node, link weight based data gathering piece is insensitive to the transmission range, so that will actually help to minimize the aggregation delay. So the aggregation delay does not shoot up as we increase the transmission range. Whereas for the node weight based data gathering trees, it increases quickly with the increase in transmission rate. Now the lower diameter is good in one way because for real-time communication, if you're not interested in gathering data from every sensor node, if you want one particular sensor node to send the data to the root node, it takes only 2 time slots to send the data to the root node, whereas it takes like 12 time slots on average to send data from any node to the root node in the link weight based data gathering tree. So what we can actually say, there's some trade-off between diameter, aggregation delay, and all these things. And this is the other metric, like average weight per node. For example, if you model each the weight as the trust score of a node, so you can see the node weight based data gathering trees have a larger average weight per node compared to the link weight based data is likely the average weight per leaf node, which is not of that important because the leaf nodes can have some less reliable nodes. So we always want to maximize the reliability of the intermediate nodes, and this shows that the node weight based data gathering is better. With respect to energy consumption, there are several factors involved here. So we can see that overall the energy consumption is not much different for these two node weight based gathering. And finally, with respect to the node and network lifetime, so this is what I said. The node weight based data gathering trees, only few intermediate nodes are there, but they are overused. So the first node dies at the end of, say, for example, 370 rounds on average. Whereas for the link weight based data gathering, the first node dies at like 770 rounds. So that's almost like more than double of this. But as I said, after the first node failure, because there are more intermediate nodes than link weight based data gathering trees, all of them are getting used over time with time, whereas with the node weight based data gathering trees, the majority of the nodes are leaf. So the majority of nodes are protected. So after the first node failure, some other node would become the intermediate node and it gets used. But since only few nodes are intermediate nodes, with time we can see that the failure of nodes, the time of failure of the nodes will get prolonged for a long time. So we see that network lifetime is almost the same for the both trees. At least for the lower range of transmission range. But as the transmission range increases, we can see that still the link weight based data gathering is better because the gain you get here is kind of retained till the end, but the difference you see here narrows down between the two trees. The network lifetime as the node lifetime is more. So this is what I mean by the coverage loss threshold. So I can set that parameter by 0.1, 0.15, and so on. So when the coverage loss in the network reaches that value, I stop and say that's the network lifetime. So overall, as I summarized before, there are trade-offs. So we can opt for this node weight based data gathering trees if you want some smaller diameter. So for real-time communication, if you want any node to report the data directly to the root node, we can opt for these trees. And also for trust-based communication or similar such applications where you want to maximize the weight of the nodes, then we can opt for the node weight based trees. Whereas the link weight based trees are most suited to minimize the overall aggregation delay as complex trade-off, which means no single strategy is better for all the scenarios or for all the metrics. So where this can be applied, these are like what I can call as a benchmarking algorithms, which means they assume some idealistic conditions, centralized network knowledge, and all these things. But using this, you can evaluate the relative performance of any node weight or link weight based data gathering trees or algorithms that are out there. And also, it's more generic in the sense that the node weights and link weights can be anything like trust score or energy available at the nodes or link expiration time and all these things. And also here I define the bottleneck node weight, if you remember, as the minimum of the pathway node weight or the minimum of the link weight. But you can also define bottleneck node weight as the maximum of the node weight or the maximum of the link weight. In that case, we want what's called the minimize the bottleneck node weight instead of maximizing the bottleneck node weight. So here we can say what's called minimize. The same algorithm can be applied for such data gathering trees also. So if you want to determine a maximum, minimum bottleneck, of course, it's small modifications in the pseudocode. We have to take the maximum instead of the minimum. Like we have to do some small modifications here, but it's very generic. That's what I mean by generic, very flexible. You can easily adapt to different games of data gathering trees, and then you can also run some other applications and analyze the trade-offs. We have another paper that actually studies that, and what we observed is the performance of the minimum bottleneck node weight is almost same as the maximum bottleneck node weight. The performance of minimum bottleneck link weight is same as the maximum bottleneck link weight. So that means there's no need to say minimum, maximum on all the things. You can simply say bottleneck node weight or bottleneck link. That's what captures this thing, the trade-offs and all these things. The bottleneck node weight is so this is the most important finding. The bottleneck node weight is more shallow. The bottleneck link weight is more deep, and because of that, we have everything depending on that. Because of fraction of deep nodes, intermediate nodes, energy consumption, everything depends on that. So this work has been already published in one journal, and it's already under review also in another couple of journals and extended versions. So if you have any questions, so that's why I don't provide any links here because it's still under review.